Buttonville, Buttonville, Buttonville. Okay, I think I can do this. Hi, I'm Don from DonDronesOn. So if I were to sneak out and put a landmine in the middle of a highway and a truck ran over it and blew up, I now know that the Transportation Safety Board would find all sorts of reasons for the incident. But my decision to place the explosive might not be considered one of the causes. And Transport Canada might give me a small fine for jaywalking. These are my conclusions after follow-up inquiries related to the Buttonville police drone collision. Let's get into it. On January the 19th, the Transportation Safety Board published their report of the collision between a York Regional Police drone and a Cessna near Toronto Buttonville Airport back in 2021. A couple of days later, I summarized that report in a video and pointed out a number of, oddities about the report. Since then, I've been doing follow-ups with the TSB, Transport Canada, the York Regional Police, and the owners of the Cessna. A very quick summary of the event. On August the 10th, 2021, a 6-kilogram Matrice M210 drone operated by the York Regional Police was launched and ended up hovering at 400 feet AGL, smack dab in the landing glide path for the Buttonville Airport, located in the Greater Toronto Area. A Cessna 172N single-engine aircraft was in the final approach for landing and collided with the drone. The plane landed safely and no one was hurt, thankfully, but there was significant damage to the Cessna. The TSB investigation report includes lots of interesting details, but it ends with 3 key findings as to what they call the causes and contributing factors. The first was that the Cessna crew failed to see the drone. The second finding was that the visual observer aiding the drone pilot was not trained and did not actually maintain visual line of sight to the drone. And finally, the drone pilot was task saturated and as a result failed to notice the approaching Cessna. Now, those are all accurate findings, but I was stunned that the failure of the Cessna pilot to see the drone was the first one listed, implying that it was the most important. And as hundreds of people pointed out in comments under my video, there was virtually zero chance anyone piloting that plane could see a tiny stationary black dot of a drone below and ahead of the plane on final approach. Zero chance. So why was this a finding at all, let alone the first finding? And why wasn't there a finding stating that the drone pilot made an utterly, and I'll be frank, utterly stupid decision to fly the drone in the direct line of the runway and so close to the glide path altitude? In my opinion, that decision is not a whole lot different than placing a landmine on a highway. So I directly asked the investigator in charge, Peter Roundtree, those exact questions. Not about the landmine. His boss, Ken Webster, responded promptly with this statement, extracted from his email. As you know, the TSB doesn't assign fault or determine civil or criminal liability. Our sole mandate is to advance transportation safety. The findings as to cause and contributing factors are usually in chronological order. As a result, the number of a specific finding does not reflect the emphasis or importance of that finding. The analysis section of our reports is the link between the factual section and the findings, and as such usually expands on the findings. Although we go to great lengths to ensure the findings are carefully worded, if they're taken out of context, the intent of the finding may sometimes be misinterpreted. So I'm calling bullshit on this. If the order of the findings is irrelevant, then why does the TSB's own press release put unsuccessful visual scanning as the lead in their news story? And why is there no finding whatsoever as to the cause and contributing factors about the decision to fly the drone without proper authorization close to an airport in controlled airspace out of visual line of sight and on a flight path that put manned aircraft at risk without any attempt at communications? Surely this decision came first, chronologically, before the so-called visual scanning failure. So this chronological order thing holds no water. And there is only passing reference to any of these factors in the report's analysis section. So that's BS too. I asked Ken Webster for an interview so he could explain these irregularities to the general public in his own words. He politely declined. I asked for written answers to my questions, and he has not responded, at least not yet at the time of this recording. So my conclusion is that the obvious finding about the bad decision was either overlooked by absolutely everyone in the 17-month investigation and review cycle, or it was in the report originally and was later scrubbed out so as not to overly tarnish the reputation of the York Regional Police. I'd love to hear another reason, but at this point, I'm left with either a botched investigation or a cover-up. My second follow-up, and no, these are not in chronological order, was with Transport Canada to find out more details about the fine that was handed out. On this front, I actually received a phone call from someone in the TC Enforcement Organization, and I'm sorry I didn't catch his name. Other than to point me to the website where the list of aviation violations and fines is available, he was not very helpful. That website, and there'll be a link in the description below this video, provides two separate lists, one for corporate and one for non-corporate violators, individuals, with the date of the violation, the region, and a few other details. Now, there are no corporate listings for August the 10th, 2021, and no reference to York Regional Police on the corporate list. Although it's frightening to see the NAV Canada violation that pops up at the very top of the list. The company permitted a person to act as an air traffic controller without holding a valid license. Okay, that's scary, but it has nothing to do with Buttonville, so let's ignore that and not go down that little rabbit hole. The bottom line here is that the York Regional Police, as an organization, did not receive a fine. On the non-corporate list, in other words, individuals, there is a violation listed for August the 10th in Ontario, and the violation references 901.47, which is flying a drone near an airport in a manner that could interfere with an aircraft in the established traffic pattern. The fine was $1,000. Now, this TC guy refused to confirm that this was the Buttonville incident, but he did confirm that if there was a violation on that date, this would be it. And he also confirmed that if there were other TC sanctions, such as suspending the pilot certificate, they would also appear here. For any other details, I would need to file an access to information request, which I immediately did. Of course, I haven't received that report yet. I'm sure it takes many months. But I'll go out on a fairly thick limb here and say that this event in the database is in fact the Buttonville collision, and the York Regional Police pilot received a $1,000 fine. He did not have his license suspended or revoked, and he was cited for violating only one regulation, 901.47. Now, without breaking a sweat, I was able to list off these 9 regulations that he definitely broke, and these other 5 that are maybes. 900.06, reckless or negligent operation. This incident is the poster child for the don't do anything stupid rule. He broke this for sure. 901.11, visual line of sight. Confirmed and admitted that he wasn't watching the drone. 901.20, visual observers. Confirmed and admitted that they weren't doing their job. 901.27, site survey. Clearly not done, because if it had been done, he wouldn't have flown there. 901.28, other pre-flight requirements. This rule refers to training crew members, which again, he didn't do. 901.14, controlled or restricted airspace. Clear violation, since no NAV Canada authorization request was made. 901.47, operations in the vicinity of an aerodrome. Well, this is the one he was charged with, so he did that. 901.73, operations in the vicinity of an airport, established procedure. No attempt to contact the airport, which is the default established procedure, so we violated this one as well. And last but not least, 901.26 horizontal distance. Well, he was flying all over a densely populated urban area, so there is little doubt he was flying over bystanders. So there's another violation. And here's the list of maybes. You can read those on your own. So there were 9 clear violations of the regulations, but he was charged with only one, flying near an airport, such that he could, or more precisely did, interfere with a manned aircraft. And this is not a case of the so-called qualified immunity, where professions like the police are assumed to be acting in good faith to protect society, and so are basically allowed to break laws in the course of their operation. If that was the case, then no violation would have been cited and no fine would have been handed out. And yet, the TC investigator did hand out a fine, indicating that the police drone pilot was not acting appropriately. But in that case, why didn't they throw the book at him? Or at least cite all of these 9 obvious violations? Now, what about the size of the fine, $1,000? How does that compare to other drone-related fines? Well, I happily downloaded the entire list of drone-related violations and did some sifting and sorting. You guys know I love Excel spreadsheets. There's a lot of interesting stuff in here, so I'll dedicate another video to the details. But a couple of key facts. 90% of fines that have been delivered have been $250 per violation. But in 67% of the cases, multiple fines were given out, one for each violation. And there are several cases of 4 or 5 violations for a given incident. In fact, 14% of the cases had total fines over $1,000. In other words, TC considered those violations worse than an actual collision with a manned aircraft. Now, how can that be? So again, I call bullshit on the single violation and bullshit on the $1,000 fine that Transport Canada gave out. There were 9 violations, and in my opinion, the fine should have been the highest amount ever delivered, not a slap on the wrist $1,000. Next follow-up, the York Regional Police. I asked to interview either the drone pilot or the head of the air support unit, offering to give them a fair chance, honestly, a fair chance to tell their side of the story. There's always 2 sides to a story. So what was their side of the story? And give them an opportunity to talk about the impact of drone regulations on first responders. They politely declined, stating, "We accept the findings of the Transport Canada report," I think they meant the TSB report, "and will not be commenting further on the incident itself. We worked cooperatively with both Transport Canada and the Transportation Safety Board of Canada during the investigation and have made the appropriate revisions to our procedures, policies, and training. Since they won't discuss it, I have filed an access to information request for the full police report of the incident, and I'll share it with you guys if there's anything interesting in that." Last but not least, I contacted Canadian Flyers, the Buttonville-based flight training school owning the Cessna, and I was immediately connected with Dario Matrandola, their VP of Aviation Operations. He didn't sound like a happy camper with regard to the TSB report. Firstly, he said, the damage described in the report was understated. In addition to the very large dent in the cowling and the destroyed carburetor airbox, he said engine mounts were torn. There was internal engine damage. The propeller actually needed to be replaced, and there was some damage to the landing gear, with repairs totaling in the neighborhood of $50,000. While the police department's insurance did eventually pay for the repairs, apparently it was far from an easy and amicable settlement. In addition, the plane was out of commission for 5 months, for which the flight school received 0 compensation. Dario also mentioned this key fact. There was a private jet that had just landed and cleared the same runway minutes before the Cessna began their final approach, something that wasn't mentioned in the TSB report. The 2 drone flights made by the police, and yes, there were 2 flights, spanned nearly a half an hour. So this private jet landing would have taken place during that interval. How could the police have missed hearing that? And again, it begs the question why the police drone pilot would decide to fly in such an incredibly bad spot with regular air traffic occurring. And again, it's a miracle there wasn't a major disaster with loss of life. So there you have it. Some further details about the collision between the York Regional Police drone and a Cessna near Toronto Buttonville Airport. I'll keep an open mind and would love to hear from the Transportation Safety Board. But for the moment, their report looks pretty bad in my opinion. And I'll let you know if the Access to Information report from Transport Canada provides any justification for only 1 violation being cited and the relatively low fine of $1,000. And the same for the police report when I receive that. Oh, and stay tuned for my analysis of drone-related offenses, what people were charged with, and the level of their fines. Thanks for watching. Talk to you again soon. Take 2 of the Buttonville. And again, it's a miracle there wasn't a major disaster with loss of lice.